Let us for a moment appreciate its name. Looking at the broad range of names that the Crown has produced over the decades, some have made a greater impact than others. But let's forget about the popularity amongst enthusiasts, or what watches in the family are broadly accepted over others. Let's just look at their names. The Submariner, excellent name. The Explorer, absolutely. The Daytona, it's alright, too easy. But let's combine the Latin abbreviation of 1000 with a unit of measurement of magnetic flux density, Milgauss. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the greatest names of a watch line that has ever been created. This watch is steeped in history, first created, as per Rolex's usual forte in the 1950s, to aid professionals. The Milgauss was specifically made for scientists and engineers who worked in environments with harsh magnetic fields, and this piece, the original, was created to withstand up to 1000 Gauss, which even to this day is impressive, but back then it was a game changer. I have just saved you 10 minutes of reading time of any popular article on this watch. The vintage piece had competition during its lifetime. One such watch that comes to mind is the IWC Engineer, created by everyone's favorite watch designer, Gerald Genter. And it seemed for over 30 years that this watch was received well, until the late 80s when it was pulled from the Rolex catalogue. I'm sure the thought process behind it was that there was no need for an engineer's watch anymore, and I'm sure the watch's popularity had declined since its inception. But in a strange, almost remarkable reveal, the Milgauss was reintroduced in the early 2000s. And the big question is why this was done in the first place. Why did Rolex deem the Milgauss important enough to bring back? Ironically, the other week, I wrote about modern Rolex, specifically Rolex as it is beyond 2015, and how Tudor have been given the creative license to produce whatever they want, while Rolex sits in the background and incrementally improves their watches without really including the word playful into their pieces. With this modern Milgauss, we can see a watch that came before this trend. I do not believe that current Rolex would have produced this watch today, but they are still hanging on to it. And this piece to me is one example of a watch that they had a blast with. The initial models came with black dials and white dials, but did a few things interestingly with the way they were composed. First, they introduced a green-tinted sapphire glass on the black dial variant, and I think it is so striking. Something so simple, but also visually captivating. Everyone knows what a sapphire crystal looks like, so having this combination is refreshing. I actually wish that this was added to more models in their lineup. It gives off a strange, vintage feel, almost as if the glass was sourced from a beer bottle. I will dub it beer bottle glass from now on. And then, before the trend even became popular, Rolex decided to introduce faux patina to the indices on the pieces, specifically the white dial variant. Admittedly, the color looks a bit too bright of an orange to come across as patina, but it does accentuate the playfulness of the watch, and in turn, matches up with the orange seconds hand. Yes, the lightning bolt. Arguably the element that gives this watch the broad appeal and disdain it receives. I absolutely agree that this edition makes the watch look cartoonish. The originals were a lot more understated. And the 1019, I believe one of the most attractive Rolex models ever made, simply had a black hand with a red tip. It is such a simple and elegant approach. The modern pieces, as we have seen with most examples, have thrown subtlety out of the window, and the lightning bolt is a clear example of this. But it is one of the only instances of Rolex using visual storytelling as an example with their watches. Think about that. In the video about Grand Seiko watches that I'll link in the corner of the screen, I discuss visual storytelling at length, and GS are one of a few brands that put this method ahead of other major names. Simply put, visual storytelling conveys an element that does not need explaining. So in the case of the Milgauss, a watch resistant to magnetism, a simple lightning bolt resembles the explanation of electricity. It is clear and concise. And when looking at these watches, you can see that Rolex had fun with these pieces. Like I've said before about design being a process of throwing ideas at the wall and hoping that one will stick, these pieces are clear examples of that. To the best of them all, the Z Blue Milgauss. This is the kind of watch that would make any enthusiast smile and nod at its owner. I adore it. Now why would I say that? The colors are off, it is so jarring, it is expensive, it's a tool-inspired watch but has become something more of a dress watch. Let me explain some reasoning behind why I enjoy it. Orange and blue are two colors that have become very popular over the last half century. They are polar opposites, one being warm and the other being cool, and this clash of color is striking, jarring even, but in a strange way that goes against color theory. They are complementary, funnily enough. Just look at the Golf logo, the logo for Fanta, for FedEx, the New York Mets, the Edmonton Oilers. This combination of deep blues, purples, and shades of orange is subtle, but also striking. So focusing on the Z-Blue dial, a combination of niobium and zirconium, this has to be one of the most gorgeous dials that Rolex makes, coupled with the emerald green of the Hulk Submariner. This blue plays with the light in so many ways, sometimes looking dark, plain, other times bright and iridescent, and this color to me really says something about Rolex. The fact that they can produce a dial like this says that they have the ability to do so, and they should exercise their capabilities more in this area. The color to me looks ethereal. I look at it and get the impression of the many light rays that we cannot see, as if the color is outside of our visible spectrum, or how an aurora borealis skirts across the skies in the northern hemisphere, or maybe cosmic radiation. That is the reason why I believe this color works so well with this watch, and the corresponding green crystal is just a nice addition to the overall look. I'm going to venture so far to say that this is one of the purest examples of a Milgauss that has ever been made, simply because of how its visual elements, though conflicting, also communicate the idea of its electrifying intention. Excuse the shameless pun. I don't see why this watch received so much negativity by some of the most respected watch channels on this platform. Another irony is that there are always complaints about Rolex playing it too safe with their pieces. In fact, I've made these complaints often. But at the same time, others find that this example strays too far ahead or beyond what is accepted. There is a fine line to follow, and this watch does go against its professional heritage, but I really find it exciting. It appeals to the generation that comes from the 60s and the 70s, and I'm all for it. Design is not always about being serious, and this playful license adds another dynamic to the Rolex name. It is a watch that is far from boring, and looking at the other models in their lineup, they all have a touch of color to them that gives them that unique element. Oh, and let's not forget about the technology on the inside, with the likes of a Faraday cage and the ability to withstand a charge that would easily kill the wearer. That is all that needs to be said. Great fun, exciting watch, polarizing, but that is the essence of magnetism.